Guys, welcome back to Star Trek: The Cruise VII. We are joined today by, oh my gosh, my inner nerd is just blowing up right now. Dr. Noor, welcome so much to our stage. Really appreciate it. Dr. Mohamed Noor, if you take a look at your screen, this guy is not short on credentials. First of all, tell us a little bit about where you're from, what you do. You're a professor at Duke.
I am. I'm currently serving as a professor and a vice provost at Duke University. So I teach classes at Duke. I have a research laboratory trying to use fruit flies to understand evolutionary processes. And on the side, I'm an occasional Star Trek science consultant.
Yeah, so you're here because you have been a consultant for, the last 3-4 years on the biology of Star Trek. Now,
that's correct.
I attended your talk the other day, and this was absolutely fascinating, some of the stuff you were talking about. As a matter of fact, I want to get to that. But first, how did Paramount find you? Like,
great question.
What was that process like?
So,
you're teaching, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, you want to come work on Star Trek?"
Yeah, it wasn't quite that sudden. There was a lot of steps in there. So I first started going to conventions in 2014, just attending and seeing the fun from them, and I loved it just from the very beginning. I got asked, at the conventions, I saw that they have science talks and other sort of academic talks at them, and I thought, wow, it'd be really fun if I could do something like that. So my first convention was Dragon Con in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I reached out to the Trek track director at Dragon Con, who you probably know very well.
Yes.
Garrett Wong.
Yes.
And I asked him, I said, could I give a talk on, say, evolution in the context of Star Trek? And he said, yeah, we'd love to have more academic content, and this would be great. So I started doing that in 2016. Right around the same time as that, Princeton University Press reached out to me and said, we'd like you to write a book and give a public talk based on that book. And the public talk I was giving the most often at that time was an evidence for evolution talk. My former PhD advisor wrote a book called Why Evolution is True. I said, well, I can't top that book, and it's fairly recent. Well, so she said, are there any other public talks you're giving? I said, well, there is something. It's a little different.
It's a little outside the box, but we're going to go with it.
So that helped then, get a little bit more name recognition and things like that. So I wrote the book. It's called Live Long and Evolve: What Star Trek Can Teach Us About Evolution, Genetics, and Life on Other Worlds. And then Dr. Erin McDonald, who's actually standing right there.
Oh my gosh, there she is, Dr. Erin!
She and I were actually giving talks together at conventions, too, on science in Star Trek. This is before either of us was associated with the franchise at all. But then in 2018, Jane Brooke and Ken Mitchell and Mary Chifo came, and they sat in the back row of one of our talks at Dragon Con. And Jane came up to me afterwards and said, hey, I went to Duke University. I see you're at Duke. So, we chatted, and she said, it'd be great if you could be a consultant for the series. I said, I would love that. So she connected me actually with the showrunner. What I didn't know happened at the same time is Dr. Erin McDonald was talking to a different writer for Discovery, and she also got connected. So we converged, and then the showrunner said, hey, I'm going to pair you with a physicist. Her name is Dr. Erin McDonald. It's like, oh my God, I know her. I can just text her right now.
That's crazy. So
it's an amazing convergence. Yeah. So we came in at the same time. Now, to be clear, she is the science advisor for the franchise. So I like to say she's the sheriff of science in Star Trek. I'm somebody who's just occasionally like a deputy. So for everything that runs through her, if there's something that she says, I can't do this by myself, then they'll bring in me or possibly somebody else.
Well, and you two also have slightly different specialties, right?
Exactly.
She's more into
astrophysics.
Exactly. And you're more into
than
the
slightly,
biology.
yes. Very different specialties.
Very close. Okay. So that brings me into my next question, which is fascinating. I listened to your talk earlier this week about why most species are humanoids. Now, this is a fascinating conversation, and one could say, well, that's because of budget, right? That's because of makeup.
Human actors.
And all that stuff. But you, during this talk, gave an in-universe answer.
Yeah.
Which blew my mind.
Oh, thank you. It's not the chase. Everybody says the chase. It's not the chase.
Is it a turtle?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell our audience a little bit about what was in your lecture?
Sure.
Why do you believe, what is the in-universe solution to why species are humanoid?
Sure. So the answer that most people cite is the episode from The Next Generation called The Chase. And the hypothesis in that is that all these different plants were seeded 4 billion years ago, and somehow that led to humanoids at the end. The probability of that level of convergence after 4 billion years is like zero.
Like, okay, that doesn't work.
No, especially if you were talking about like cross compatibility, where you can have kids with a Vulcan, because literally you would be more closely related to grass than you would be to a Vulcan. Like you would have a more recent shared ancestor with them. So there's no way.
That's amazing,
right? There's no way.
We need to make that a T-shirt. All
Yeah,
right,
right.
you're more related to grass than you are a Vulcan. All right, so what's your idea?
Yeah, instead there's the episode The Paradise Syndrome. So this is from original series. That's the one where Kirk goes down to a planet. He finds some Native Americans and some grass and things like that. And there's an obelisk there, and Spock translates something on the obelisk and said it was placed by a super race known as the Preservers, who basically rescued populations and seeded them on other worlds. So the hypothesis there, rather than having a common ancestor 4 billion years back, is maybe it's a couple of 100,000 years back, something like that. Is much more reasonable. At that point, you can imagine over a couple 100,000 years, could you have change where, for example, we have roughly 4 heads or pointed ears? Maybe. Would we still be compatible? Maybe. I mean, that it kind of works. I mean, that is reasonable. And we know it's reasonable because we know humanoids on Earth did interbreed, or sorry, humans on Earth did interbreed with Neanderthal. So that's another humanoid species that was present here. Also with Denisovin, another ancient humanoid that was present here. So it works.
Wow, that's
and go Spock. Spock got it.
Yeah, Spock figured it. Listen, he had all this figured out way before us Earthlings.
Yep.
Okay. So let me wrap up with this because I know your time is so valuable. Thank you very much for taking the time.
It's an honor.
As a matter of fact, we have a little surprise for you guys here coming up in just a minute. If anybody maybe happens to be recruiting, all right, just bear with me for a second. My last question for you is, as a biologist in real world application, when you look at the species on Trek and some of the insight that you have and some of the techno babble or the biological babble that they've given to you, what species do you find to be the most biologically fascinating? The one that we could learn the most from, or the one that is the most unique? Which one just blows your mind?
Tholian.
Tholian.
I love the
Tell
Tholians.
us why.
They're so cool. So I mean, they're these weird crystalline things. They, unlike us, they live in a very different temperature environment. They're sensitive to vibrations. They're just so radically different. That's what I love about them. I mean, Klingons, Vulcans, they're all fun, but they're basically people. They're just like upgraded people. Right?
They're like super people.
Yeah, right. But I mean, the Tholians are just radically different, and like they're not even close to humanoid. Are they silicon based? I don't know. I mean, there's all sorts of interesting things. I would love to study a Tholian. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So coming back to the in-universe thought process. Are they a species that could have stemmed down from your seed, from the planting, like you said? Or is this somebody that would be considered a completely independent species?
It's possible. So either one's possible. But, I mean, if you were to – I mean, obviously no Tholian came from a human in the last 100,000 years. That definitely didn't happen. But could Tholians be completely independent? Maybe. Yeah. I mean, there's no reason to assume they wouldn't be. And that's fair. That would work. The other possibility is that maybe we share a common ancestor with Tholians back, say, 4 billion years ago. Maybe.
Lots of things can change, right?
Lots of things can change.
Talk to Janeway in Paris about it, right?
Yeah.
All right, daggone it, I had to do it. He was like, listen, we're not talking about it. We're not talking about it. Okay. Dr. Noor, thank you so much for spending time with us. I really, really appreciate that. Guys, what is absolutely fascinating about this, and we've talked about this time and time again about being on this cruise, being able to run into people, but we're all here because we love Star Trek.
Yes.
And as it turns out, Commanders, this gentleman right here at Ops Level 25 just happens to be looking for an alliance in Star Trek Fleet Command. You've been playing for a little while, kind of on and off, right?
Yep, exactly. I was off for a little while and I got kicked out of my alliance.
I was going to say, you've been busy a little bit, so your alliance booted you.
My alliance booted me.
So he might be looking. Listen, serious applicants only, all right? And I'll find out what server he's on. We'll see if we can hook somebody up.
I'm in the Klingon faction, though. Be ready for that.
He plays the game. Isn't that exciting? Commanders, thank you so much for tuning in to this little snippet. Thank you to Dr. Mohamed Noor.
Thank you for having me.
Crazy. The talks have been great. The talks have just been great. Guys, this is what you can look forward to on Star Trek The Cruise 8, where we will be back next year, and you will be as well.
That's the plan.
Already ready to go. So, and he mentioned Dr. Aaron McDonald, who has also agreed to stop by our show coming up here before too long. So you've got that to look forward to.
She literally just walked by.
We're going to go tackle her. All right, guys, we'll be back right after this. Don't go anywhere. See ya.